This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 140.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Happy New Year. Happy 2024. Back for another year on the Veterinary Project Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Jonathan, hope you're off to a great start of the year. I mean, we're recording this to wrap 2023. Our listeners will be listening to this early January. So hope Christmas was good to you, buddy.
I hope by the time this comes out, it will have been as well, too. We're so ahead of the game this year that we're doing some pre-recording, and it's pretty awesome. Excited about today's guest as it relates to 2024 health. In the past, we've done these for the start of the year. This one with Ryan was pretty damn jam-packed with information and goodies that everybody's going to want to listen to. It was good. Yes. He speaks very well.
Yeah, he's a great guest. And I mean, there was a lot of those different nuances to health that I wanted to get into. And we did. You know, we've had nutritionists on before. We've talked to personal trainers before. But it was really good to get into some of those other areas of health, you know, sauna, cold plunge, breath work, sleep that maybe don't get talked about as much, but are very, very important.
And how-tos. You know, he's got a very successful business working one-on-one and group sessions and working on protocols and tweaks. And we got into that today. I think also for our listeners that are listening on audio, and we do have 75% of our listeners that are ladies, he's not a bad looking dude. He looks the exact example of health. Let's put it.
He's all right on the eyes, isn't he?
He is all right on the eyes. I think, there's a few more Instagram followers to be had for him after this episode.
Yeah. Absolutely. No,
which is great, which is perfect. Health in action, right? He exudes health from my perspective virtually. Looking at him, it's the first time I met him, first time I've got to speak with him and go, dude's a good looking dude. He looks like he's living his truth.
Yeah. And I said this to you before we hit record. His name kind of came across my desk and, you know, was recommended to me by some people that I hold in pretty high regard and said, you know, he's no joke. Like this is serious. Like he gets results with what he does. And really that's what we're looking for. You know, when I think of our listeners and, you know, whatever phase of life you're in, but a lot of us are in this phase of life where growing career, growing family, there's a lot of stuff we're trying to juggle. And sometimes our health takes a back seat, and that's really unfortunate. And sometimes it takes something, you know, major to course correct us. But I do remember, Tom, my veterinary mentor would always, you know, talk about how we spend our health to accumulate wealth, and then we have to turn around and we spend our wealth to try and buy back our health. And it feels a little bit backwards, right? So I know we're big fans if we can try and be a bit proactive in that space.
Agreed. And yeah, that's a great quote. And again, for anybody that needs to listen and maybe listen to it a couple times, he's got some a really good origin story as to why he even got started himself in this space. And I can speak to it on the exact same terms with my own family. So it hits home.
Absolutely. I guess before we dive in here, for you specifically, 2024 health garden of life, what are you eyeing up? What are, you know, maybe some takeaways from this episode or things you're going to try and move the needle on in 2024?
I think simply it's very similar to what Ryan describes as trying to minimize the barriers to entry. Candace and I and our family, I would say, are overall on the upper side in that 75 75th percentile on the health side. We take it pretty seriously, but even with that, tweaking into sleep has been more difficult for us over the last year. There's been stress involved, change in life, etc. So focusing in on my sleep, and we've been doing that the last couple of months. Nutrition, I may, and again, we haven't, I may go off the drink. I may go off alcohol for the full year. I'm not enjoying drinking beer the way I used to. I had one the other night, and I could have skipped that. Now I still like the old fashioned that was after that. So, you got to take some sacrifices with it, but that's another one. And to the overall effect for health and making sure you continue to eat, I keep getting pressure, from coach to get more protein in. And I have a big goal of, hypertrophy related to my workouts. Cardio is pretty good, enjoying playing the squash. So all those pieces, and then focusing a little bit more in on stress reduction related to what am I focusing my attention on a day-to-day basis in the leadership roles that I am. What is the decision making I need to do in strategy, and how does that impact the individuals that I help lead on the different teams? If I get that right, that helps us all. And truthfully, that's what I'm here to do. That's my job. That is my career. So by us focusing in more on our health and all these different gardens of life, as you like to describe, I will be better at my job. So that's a long-winded answer.
Nice.
I'll flip it. Tell me yours.
Well, I'm going to keep mine brief. My big goal is VO2 max. I want to get it over 60. So that's just going to be a combination of things, zone 2 and high intensity training. I really want to get a sauna. I knew that before we had Ryan on, and then this kind of solidifies it even more. That would be fantastic. So that's something I'm going to put on the list. I'm not committing to it in 2024, but as soon as we're able, I think a sauna is in order.
We have a sauna at the gym where we go to 3 minutes away here at the rec center, and it is fantastic. And again, he gets into the different temperatures, and that thing destroys me. It is so hot, but it feels so good. Yeah. So same thing. We've talked about getting one in the house. I was like, no, I don't need the infrared. I can go 3 minutes away. It's wicked. Now I don't do it 4 times a day or 4 times a week. It'd be great to get a few more in.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, let's get into it. Our guest today is Ryan Kennedy. Ryan Kennedy is a functional medicine practitioner and board-certified clinical nutritionist who helps people improve their health through lifestyle and dietary changes. He works with entrepreneurs and busy professionals utilizing efficient and targeted approaches to maximize their performance, longevity, and quality of life. It's a very good one. Please listen all the way. Jonathan and I put this podcast together. We've been doing it for however long we've been doing it, because we genuinely want the best for the veterinary community. And as we talk about in this episode, if you don't have your health, what do you have? So cheers, everyone, to a healthy 2024. Enjoy this episode with Ryan Kennedy. All right, Ryan, thanks for joining us on the Veterinary Project podcast.
Appreciate you guys having me.
I'm really looking forward to this one, Ryan. I've heard you say on other podcasts, health has become cool. I found myself, I'm aging, I'm coming up on 39. A lot more focus has been put on health over the last couple years. We have some mutual friends that have dove into some of your work and had exceptional results. So we wanted to get you on and share you with our audience.
Appreciate it, Michael.
So I guess a good place to start, introduce yourself to our audience. What got you so interested in this health space? I mean, and as I follow your work, you've taken it up a notch, right? You go into the nitty gritty, and we'll get into lots of those tangents, but tell us a little bit about your journey.
Really started from a pain to purpose journey where back in 2008, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time, being young, I didn't know the full extent of what created that, caused that, what solutions there were. But she went through the conventional medical system and went through chemotherapy and radiation, and her oncologist telling her, like, this is really the only route that will help you. What you eat doesn't matter. No herbs or vitamins or supplements can help you. Your lifestyle and all these other factors don't really play a role. It's just bad luck and genetics, and take these drugs and hope for the best. And she did. She listened to them, as many people do. And unfortunately, that misinformation led to an early death in 2010. And so at this time, I was thinking, I'm a young guy. I don't want to have the same outcome. Obviously, it created a lot of pain and challenge within my family dynamic. And so it got me interested in this stuff from a very early age. Like, why do people get sick? What other options are there? to restore one's health if they do get sick, whether it be cancer, heart disease, diabetes, neurological issues, autoimmune conditions. There's so many chronic health challenges with our society. And so I got very interested in this and went through and studied kinesiology in my undergrad. Was more so focused on the fitness side of this equation. And as I was working in physical therapy clinics and, really helping people with their physical fitness, their biomechanics, all sorts of other things, I realized pretty quick, if you're not dialing in your sleep and your nutrition and stress management and environments and looking at your lab testing and replenishing different deficiencies, the physical fitness stuff only takes you so far, right? So I went back to school, studied naturopathic and functional medicine and post-grad. And that brings me where I am today, where I run a full-time practice, work with patients, and help them with the broad variety of things that I think really influence one's health and really drive a vital, healthy state versus a disease state. And reflecting back on my mom's journey, I really realized it was a lot of the misinformation she received leading up to this point that led her to become ill in the first place. And this was, pre-internet being super common and social media being really popular as far as information. So she would listen to mainstream media outlets and the food guide pyramid telling people to swap out butter for margarine and eat lots of whole grains and all this nonsense that we can look back on today and say, this is horrible advice, despite it still being propagated by these mainstream media outlets. And I really made it my life's mission to educate and inspire people to take action in a way that is conducive to achieving great health and avoiding chronic illness and really even beyond longevity, just feeling and performing your best day in and day out.
Man, that's interesting. Okay, so we're going to dive into lots of these avenues. I have to ask you, this isn't even a fair question to start with, but if we look at all these as dials, so you've got your physical health and movement, exercise, your nutrition, and then you mentioned stress management. We're going to get into breath work, all this different stuff. Of all these dials, is there one that rises to the surface that's like, okay, this is the one you should focus on more? Or is it really they're all connected and you can't silo them off? And if you're going to play with one, you have to play with the others.
Everyone has one that's most important for them, right? We all know people who may exercise and be really on top of their fitness. They might sleep great. They might, enjoy their work and not have a high stress level, but their nutrition is horrible. They drink tons of alcohol. They eat a bunch of fried foods. Their diet is a mess. So for that individual, the nutrition pillar would be the most important thing to focus on because these other pillars they're doing pretty well in. There's other examples where someone else might be eating really well, but they're a total couch potato. They never move their body and they need to get up and focus on their exercise pillar. There's other people who might eat clean and exercise, but they have horrible sleep patterns and they sleep 4 or 5 hours a night and they have mild to moderate insomnia. So it really varies based on the person. From just a general perspective, I like to tell people, Michael, sleep is the foundation. So if you're not sleeping well, that is going to have the biggest and most extreme impact on all these other areas of your health. Because it's really hard to exercise when you're chronically fatigued and sleep deprived. It's really hard to eat well when your cravings are sky high, your blood sugar is a mess because you haven't been sleeping well. It's really hard to manage stress when you're sleep deprived. So I think that is really the bedrock. That is the foundation for a lot of us. But again, some people sleep great and they don't have any problems and they get their 7.5 hours of sleep every night and they really need to focus their efforts in other avenues. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it does depend on the individual, where they're currently slacking versus where they're currently excelling.
No, that's good. Let's dive into sleep then, since it's come up. I'm fortunate, I guess. I think I have pretty good sleep habits. I love my sleep. What are some of the big things you see across your client base and the thousands of people you've worked with when people come and they're maybe not sleeping very well? Like, what are some of the big ticket items that you see outstanding? And then some of the recommendations that you make, kind of generally speaking, to improve that?
One of the biggest things is their meal timing. Way too many folks eat too late at night. And this is a recipe for fat storage and it's a recipe for horrible sleep. So pushing your dinner earlier is an incredibly effective strategy to improve your sleep quality. So we've gotten conditioned in our society that we go out to dinner at 7:30 p.m. You sit down, you wait for your food to get there, you eat, you hang out. Many people are eating at 8, 9 p.m. and then they're going to bed at 10 o'clock and it's just horrible for your sleep quality. It's your body's diverting all this energy towards digestion rather than towards recovery, rejuvenation, detoxification, all these other things that we want to take place while we're sleeping. So that's a big one that I think flies under the radar as far as people's awareness of the importance of not eating close to bedtime
Is
for
there a
metabolic
rule?
health.
Is there a rule in there, Ryan, like X number of hours before bed, or what would be a rough guideline?
I tell people 4 to 5 hours before bed. Now, not everyone can do that with their schedule. And that's not like, oh, I ate late, so now I'm going to stay up till 2 a.m. like that. You shouldn't push your bedtime back just because you had a late night dinner. But in an ideal scenario, if you go to bed at, let's say, 10:30, you should try to strive to be done with dinner by 5:30 or 6. That would be a fantastic goal. And depending on one's work schedule and family obligations and other things, maybe the best they could do is 6:30. Well, that's a lot better than 8 p.m. So kind of finding a middle ground of what works for you and what's getting closer to that 4 or 5 hours before bed window. So that's a big one. The other thing with sleep, guys, is you need to set yourself up for success. A lot of people do all the wrong stuff during the day. They wake up and they don't expose themselves to any morning sunlight, which is huge for your circadian rhythm. They're on screens and devices indoors all day. They don't exercise. They don't physically wear their bodies out, which leaves you to be tired and wired later on in the evenings. They're exposing themselves to all this artificial junk light that suppresses their natural melatonin production late into the evenings by watching Netflix and being on their phones and being on their computers. All of these things are just setting themselves up for failure. And then they get to bed at 10 or 11 p.m., hit the pillow, and they're like, why can't I sleep well? It's like, well, dude, you did all the wrong things the whole course of the day. So it's really analyzing like how you start the day, what you do during your evening routine practices, how you spend your time that's going to be conducive to good quality sleep that night. So those play a big role. Caffeine intake is obviously a big thing. Not to say you can't consume caffeine, but having it later on in the day because it has a long half-life can definitely set you up for sleep challenges. If you're consuming stimulants past 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, for some people, they're more sensitive to caffeine. They need to cut off their caffeine intake by 10 or 11 a.m. to make sure that it's not interfering with their sleep quality. So there's a lot of variables. There's also your sleeping environment, making sure you're in a cool room, your body's not overheated, because that really inhibits you from going into the stage 3 and stage 4 deep in REM cycles. You want it to be as dark as possible. And if you can't, make it pitch black in your room wearing an eye mask so that you don't have any mild ambient light, which can disrupt sleep rhythms. And then there's a whole bunch of other factors, that really play into this. So it's kind of a complex thing, but for people to understand that there's a lot in your control that you can do, minor tweaks, not a ton of time, not a ton of effort, that can really make a meaningful difference here.
Ryan, I have a few questions I'm circling back to on the meal timing. So let's pretend I eat my final meal, 5:36. I did a good job there. Then I have some cravings kick up around 9 o'clock. Should there be no food consumption following that last meal and bedtime, or where are we at there?
Correct. You should not be doing any late night snacking. And if you were to abide by this advice for 1 to 2 weeks, you'll find that you don't have any late night food cravings. Our bodies, based on our natural circadian rhythm, our biological clock, we suppress our hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin, in the evenings, and we increase our satiety hormone called leptin in the evenings, which creates the environments where you don't really want to eat. Now, most people have hijacked this natural hormonal rhythm because they do snack and they have something sweet and they have some chips, or they have whatever, and now their body expects those foods because they've distorted this natural rhythm, and now they are craving food at 9, 10 p.m. before bed. So all you need is the discipline to cut that out entirely for 1 to 2 weeks, a very short period of time, and you'll find it's effortless. You'll find your body just doesn't crave any food. You're not hungry. You don't really need anything before bed, even if you're a very active individual. I'm a pretty active guy, you guys. I train hard. I like to surf and mountain bike and play sports, and I eat dinner at 3:30 p.m. I don't need anything between that and going to bed at 10 o'clock. Most people don't need to be as extreme as I am, but man, does it make a world of difference in your short and long-term health, your sleep quality, how you feel the next morning. It's the freaking best. It is so underrated. Early dinners.
I think
Do you
that's what
intermittent fast on top of that? Do you put some hours in the morning where you don't eat as well?
I personally do a little bit, but it's when it comes to intermittent fasting. So it's just intermittent fasting is having a compressed eating window. And most people do it wrong because they backload that eating window. So they fast throughout the whole first half of the day. This is when your body needs calories. This is when your mind is going, your body's going, you're probably exercising, you're working on your business or on your career, and you're depriving your body of any food, which really creates a big spike in cortisol. And this is not the ideal way to fast. And then most people eat their first meal at 12 or 1 or 2 p.m. And then they end up eating later at night. And that's intermittent fasting because you're still eating within, call it an 8-hour eating window, right? Then you have a 16-hour fast. What I like to do is take that same 8-hour eating window, but shift it forward. So I might eat first in the morning at 8 a.m. I wake up early. So I wake up at 5:30. So it's not like first thing I get out of bed and I go eat. but I might eat my first meal at 8 a.m., but then I'm done eating by 4 p.m. So I have the same 8-hour eating window someone else might who's doing intermittent fasting. It's just mine is front loaded, theirs is back loaded. And I find that works so much better for our digestion, for our energy levels, for our hormone balance. For men, it's really helpful for testosterone. Women do not typically do well when it comes to backloading all their calories and fasting for the first 6 or 7 hours of the day. It tends to throw off a lot of their sex hormones. Driving up that cortisol is not advisable for long stretches of time. Now, keep in mind, people could do this for a week or two, feel great. But if you do this for many months on end, a lot of women I work with run into challenges.
Interesting. Ryan, I want to go back to sleep just so I can tie a bow on it. One curveball question I have for you is shift work, because we are going to have a portion of our listeners that everything you've said sounds great, but at nighttime they're going to work, right? Like their shift is totally backwards to the circadian rhythm. How do you approach that?
The honest truth, Michael, they're making a sacrifice. They're sacrificing their health for their career, and there's no way around it. I mean, the WHO, the World Health Organization, has categorized shift work as a stage 2 carcinogen. It causes cancer. We know that. So if you are working overnight shift, I commend you for the work you do. And I know a lot of people who are paramedics, firefighters, police officers, nurses, doctors, they make that sacrifice, and that's awesome. But they have to be aware there's no way that you can offset all the downsides if you are choosing to participate in shift work. It is going to take a toll on your health. So I encourage whoever is in that situation to work their way out of it, because I can tell them, hey, you could try taking these herbs and load up on some magnesium and use a couple of these biohacking gadgets and devices, but it might help 10 or 20%. It's not going to offset all the downsides. Shift work is just really tough on the body. That's the bottom line.
Okay. And sorry, we are going to move, but I just find sleep fascinating. So I've heard very high performers will say something along the lines of, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? There's work that needs to be done. They're going to sacrifice their sleep. They're going to go. Obviously, that would be very contraindicated.
Yeah. They'll be dead a lot sooner than if they didn't have that mindset. Yeah. It really served them well to say, hey, I will perform significantly better in my business with my work if I'm well rested. And by trying just to burn the midnight candle and work your way through stuff till 2, 3 in the morning and then wake up early and do it again, it is creating a really negative impact on their health.
Okay, Ryan, I'll get off sleep now. I'm going to go around to what you said. Set yourself up, how you start the day, light exposure. And this is one for me personally. So I'm up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, which means currently, I don't know when the sun is rising. It's pretty late into the morning and it's setting very early. And going outside and getting sunlight, I've heard you recommend, shirt off and really capturing that, doesn't work very well given our climate and our temperature. So I get your take, I guess, just on light exposure and sunlight. And then I do want to dive into some nuance of, what do people do that are in northern climates or maybe that are indoors a large percentage of the day?
So I'll give you the answer to your question. But before I do, the best thing that you could do and people could do if they live in northern climates is move closer to the equator. And this goes like there's a ton of scientific evidence showing that it massively improves your health span by living closer to the equator. Now, to actually give you some practical advice, what I would suggest, and I have many patients I work with who live on the East Coast or live in Canada and northern hemispheres where you're right, it's freezing cold and it's dark in the mornings when you wake up. I would encourage you to get a bright light therapy device. This is like a lamp that you would have in your area where you wake up and kind of go get your day started. And it emits 10,000 lux, which is a measure of light intensity. And this is going to help to mimic some of the benefits of morning sunlight. Now, one thing you mentioned with the shirt off, you do not need to have your shirt off when you go out for morning sunlight. You're trying to get light in through the eyes. If you take off your shirt, more of that near infrared light on your skin, it's great, but it's not necessary. So if it's cold, but you still have some sunlight, you can still do this even with a winter coat on, even if you're trying to stay warm. Again, if you wake up at 6 a.m., it's not light till 8 a.m., I would encourage you to get a bright light therapy device as you're going through making your coffee in the morning or reading a book or whatever it is you do in the mornings. Have it on. You don't have to stare at it. That's going to hurt your eyes. Just have it on in your vicinity, and that's going to be very helpful. And then once the sun does come up, 1 or 2 hours after you've woken, still make a concerted effort to get your ass outside and soak up some of that sunlight. And you don't have to look straight at the sun. You just have to be outside in the environment of that sunlight, and your eyes are going to pick up those spectrums of light that's going to create these benefits. So most people that live in cold climates, I tell a lot of my patients, like that's where we do a little better living through science. Get a bright light therapy device, I would also encourage you to get a red light therapy device. This is different. This is a different nanometer wavelength of red light that's going to help to simulate what you would get if you went outside to lay out in the sun with your shirt off. It's not going to make you tan per se. It's not a tanning bed, but it's going to stimulate the mitochondria the same way near infrared light from the sun does to enhance your energy, to enhance your cellular health, to enhance your collagen production, so your skin health. And it's going to have a lot of benefits as far as your mood goes for offsetting what's called seasonal affective disorder, which is a real thing. It's basically we're solar powered animals. And when you stick someone inside in the winter and they don't get a lot of sun, you feel lousy. You feel depressed. You feel fatigued. You don't feel your best. And that's just the nature of us being solar powered animals and not getting the sun that we need. So some of these light therapy devices can really help get you through the winter and offset some of these damaging effects to your health. It's not perfect. It's not as good as Mother Nature, but it's close.
Mm-hmm. What kind of daily dose are you looking at now? I mean, obviously, if I'm you and I'm in San Diego, I have to contend with sunburn. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it. So what would be kind of the daily recommendation if someone's getting it naturally? And then also same question, if I am using one of these, red light devices indoors.
Call it sensible sun exposure for this reason. It is not healthy or sensible to go out to the beach for 5 hours and get burnt to a crisp, because burns are bad for your skin, whether it's from the stovetop, hot water, or the sun. It creates oxidative damage and it does create accelerated skin aging. Not good. So the answer to your question, though, depends on a number of factors, right? So this time of year, at this recording, it's winter. So the intensity of the sun, even where I'm at in San Diego, is much less than in July when it's peak summer, and it's much more intense. So I can go out now for 2-3 hours and not get sunburned, whereas I might get sunburned in 45 minutes in peak summer. So the amount does depend on the time of year, depends on your proximity to the equator. San Diego is not as close to the equator as Mexico. And so if I go down to Cancun or if I go down to Mexico for a surf trip, I got to be more mindful of the sunburn factor than I do here in San Diego, even in winter. And then the other thing that is a variable here is your skin's tolerance to the sun. So as you get more sun exposure on a consistent basis, you build a solar callus, you build a tan. That's more melanin production in your skin, which creates protection against the oxidative damage that causes a sunburn. Your nutrition also impacts this. So having a lot of antioxidants in your diet, eating things like wild-caught salmon that have astaxanthin, very protective against oxidative stress from the sun. So to answer your question in short, I generally suggest people do 10 to 15 minutes on each side if it's like a warm summer day. That's going to be a short enough period of time that you're not going to get burned, but you're going to get all these benefits. If it's not summer, you might be able to do 20 or 30 minutes on each side. The goal is not like more the better, because it is a Goldilocks zone. And you can see when you're starting to get sunburned. If you monitor your skin, you'll actually get blood pooling to the surface of your skin, and you'll get a very mild pink pigment on your skin when you press it. That means you're starting to get sunburned and you should get it out of the sun. And so you can like monitor your skin and get a good feeling for this. If you're just super pale white, your ancestry is not somewhere that gets a lot of sun, you might start with 5 minutes each side. It's not a race. And you might work your way up to where after a couple of months, you're doing 10 minutes on your front, 10 minutes on your back, and you're still not getting sunburned, but you're getting all these benefits. So it's a very nuanced answer, but I hope that gives you some guidance there.
And I am curious, I guess, for us northern folk, on the red light device, is there a certain amount there? Or what kind of principles can you follow?
Yeah, the company I like for this is called Platinum LED. I have no affiliation with them. I just find that they make really high quality red light panels for a very fair price. And generally you'd start with about 10 minutes on each side. You do 10 minutes on your front, 10 minutes on your back. You can work your way up to 15 and 15. You might start with 5 minutes in the front, 5 minutes in the back, and work your way up from there. You're not going to get sunburns, but you don't want to overdo it. Just like when you're getting sun naturally, there's still that Goldilocks zone, even with one of these red light panels.
Interesting.
Can I jump in for a second, Ryan? Because I'd love to ask about your views on the use of sunscreen, and again, in the context of the conversation we're having here.
You have two types of sunscreen. You have chemical sunscreen and mineral sunscreen. The conventional stuff, I won't say any brands, but the conventional stuff that you get at the grocery store is chemical sunscreen, and no one should ever use that ever. It's horrible for you. The chemicals seep into your bloodstream transdermally, and it is just all bad news. The other type of sunscreen is mineral-based, where they're using a zinc oxide as the primary ingredient without a lot of added nonsense. Those can be used safely. And you are going to offset some of that UV exposure, that ultraviolet exposure to your skin, and it is going to help as some protection. I will use it in certain instances, like if I'm surfing on a summer day for 2 hours, I'll put some on my nose and forehead, which get a lot of exposure to the sun, just so I don't get sunburned. But generally speaking, unless I'm surfing, my strategy that I advise for other people is to get as much sun as your skin can tolerate with no sunscreen, because even the mineral sunscreen will block some of these benefits. It'll block your ability to synthesize vitamin D3. It'll block some of the benefits that you're looking for. So get as much as you can. Maybe that's 10 minutes, maybe that's 30 minutes, and then put on a long sleeve shirt and put on a hat and protect yourself from the sun. Here's a fatal mistake people make, guys, is they think I'm just going to lather on all the sunscreen and go to the beach for 6 hours in July and I'm protected because I put on so much sunscreen. It's not eliminating the radiation or the oxidative stress from the sun. So you may not get burned to a crisp because you were loaded with sunscreen, but it's still creating that aging of your skin. So I'm more of a proponent of getting whatever you can without sunscreen. And if you are surfing or doing something where like you can't wear a wide brim hat, well then yeah, you could use it in those contexts. But if you're out for a hike, if you're hanging around the beach but on the sand, that's where I would recommend clothing and a hat over just lathering on tons of sunscreen.
So 2 follow-ups then to that, Ryan, is one, for us northerners that don't use zinc oxide, and again, I'm generalizing, is that the one that makes you very white when you're out on the beach?
They have ones that don't, but generally speaking, yes. Those are the ones that you see like a white coating, lifeguards and such will use, and surfers. But I can send you guys a brand that doesn't, it's a clear zinc oxide. It goes on clear.
And then the second question is that counters many of the current hypotheses that say you should have your face cream with a 15 SPF, a 30 SPF on all the time, winter or summer. So tell us about that.
Well, I'll tell you, the dermatology industry has done a phenomenal job of popularizing sunscreen. But if you look at the rates of skin cancer and the rates of sunscreen use, they go up linearly, hand in hand, if you look at the last 50 years of data. So people are using more sunscreen, but they're getting more skin cancer. And when you start to look at the data, you just see some obvious problems here. Now, I don't necessarily deter people from covering their face all the time because one, the skin on our face is thinner and more susceptible to wrinkles than the skin on our body. And most people get a lot of sun on their face just going to the car and back and walking around their yard and doing whatever you do during the day, right? So having some protection on your face is good, especially if you want to minimize wrinkles and aging. The other thing is when you're talking about the benefits of the sun, like you're talking about the vitamin D synthesis, you're talking about the nitric oxide production, the melanin production, the blood flow, the hormonal benefits, the mood boosting benefits. You got to think of your body like a solar panel. The more skin exposure, the more of these benefits you're going to receive. So you can keep your face totally protected and have your shirt off and have way more surface area than you're just going to get from your nose and forehead on the face. So like when I lay out in my backyard, guys, I lay out flat where my upper chest and above is shaded because I have a patio overhang. So I position myself so that my face is in the shade, my upper chest and below is in full sun. So I don't want to get tons of extra sun on my face. And that's something that I think people would benefit from if they, again, don't want to have wrinkles and also want to get all these benefits of the sun.
Thank you.
Ryan, let's dive into different temperature therapy. I know they're totally different, but I'm thinking sauna, I'm thinking cold plunge. I would love to hear your thoughts. And especially, I mean, if you look at social media, I don't want to say fad per se, but they have got a lot of popularity, the last year or two. So what's your take? Let's start with sauna and then jump over to cold plunge.
There is a tremendous amount of research on sauna for literally every aspect of your health improving. I mean, it's one of the few things that done 4 times a week can compete with exercise as far as increasing your health span and decreasing what's called all-cause mortality. So just dying from any reason. So sauna is amazing for longevity. It's fantastic for detoxification. We preferentially excrete toxins out of our skin. So if someone has mold or mycotoxin exposure, heavy metals like mercury, lead, arsenic, glyphosate, and different pesticide chemicals, using the sauna is an amazing way to eliminate some of those things out of your body very efficiently. It's also phenomenal for your mental health. Get a nice boost in serotonin and dopamine, which makes you feel amazing. And guys, just from a practical sense, my own personal anecdote, I've been deep into the space for a long time, and I've bought and used almost every type of biohacking equipment you could think of all the gadgets and gears and hyperbaric oxygen and ozone and all sorts of stuff people probably haven't even heard of. And of everything I've ever bought, and everything I've ever used, I've gotten the greatest ROI, the greatest return on investment with my sauna. I mean, you just feel amazing. And it's awesome to use post-workout specifically because it helps to ramp up your growth hormone and for men, testosterone. But for women, they also get that increase in growth hormone, which helps with muscle recovery, helps with muscle growth, helps with skin and your overall body regenerating. You also get a tremendous amount of benefit to your cardiovascular system. I just can't say enough good things about the sauna. And you just feel better when you sweat. When you sweat like that, I mean, you just feel totally rejuvenated. You feel the stress of your life just decrease. It's awesome. So I'm a huge proponent of that. Cold exposure, the science has shown if you don't post it on Instagram, you don't get the benefits. So that's why you guys have seen so much. I'm just kidding. People love to virtue signal and say, I'm tougher than you. I have more grit than you. I do more healthy things than you. So they love to share their cold exposures on social media. But in reality, the sauna has way more research than the cold plunge. And there's been tremendous amounts of studies done out of Finland, which is like the sauna capital of the world, that shows all the things I'm describing to you guys as far as actual clinical studies. Cold exposure is a little newer on the scene. I think it's also great. I think it has a lot of upside in terms of boosting your energy and dopamine, having very powerful anti-inflammatory benefits. So reducing joint aches and reducing a lot of physical inflammation people suffer from. And I think it's awesome, but it also requires a tremendous amount of willpower to get in 40-degree water. I don't know what that is, maybe 2 or 5 degrees Celsius. I like people to look at it from a big picture view as well, where I've had some patients where they're exerting so much discipline and willpower on using the cold plunge that they're falling short in other aspects of their lifestyle that I think are more important. And so it's something to be mindful of. But in general, they're both great therapies. I'm a bigger fan of the sauna than the cold plunge if I had to choose one. And I think they both stack together really well too, where you can go back and forth and get some of this hot and cold contrast therapy that's great for your cardiovascular system. It's great for your growth hormone response. It has a ton of benefits.
Ryan, let's just pretend I bought a sauna and I call you up and I say, okay, what's the prescription now? Like I heard you say 4 times a week, but temperature, duration, what you recommend? And I know it's going to vary person by person, but sort of broad stroke.
It's pretty similar across the board for people. And what more so varies is the temperature. So if you're in an infrared versus a traditional Finnish style sauna where it has a corner heater with rocks that you pour water on the rocks, you're going to get different temperatures in those. Infrared saunas don't get as hot. You might get your infrared sauna up to 130, 140 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas traditional saunas, you can get it up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's going to determine the duration to some degree. Now, as far as frequency of use, a lot of the research shows 4 times per week is like kind of the minimum frequency to get maximum benefits. Now, it's not an all or nothing thing. You could use the sauna once or twice a week and still get amazing benefits. But if you wanted to maximize these benefits, you'd want to do at least 4 days per week. I personally use the sauna every day I'm not traveling. So if I'm out of town, I have a sauna at home for context. If I'm out of town, I don't go out of my way to like drive 30 minutes in an Uber to find a sauna. But if I'm at home, I use that thing every freaking day and I love it. Now, as far as how long you should stay in there depends on your tolerance to the heat as well as your temperature of your sauna. So generally speaking, 20 minutes is a good, just arbitrary ballpark number. If it's an infrared sauna, it's not as hot. You could probably go up to 30, 35. If you're brand new to the sauna, you should always listen to your body. And if you get in a hot sauna and after 12 or 15 minutes, you feel like you're going to pass out, like don't push it too much further, like get out of the sauna, right? Be smart. But generally 20, 25 minutes, I think is a good ballpark duration. And then timing of the day, I believe you get the most benefit doing immediately post-workout. So after you did your resistance training or after you did your cardio, you jump right in the sauna. I think that maximizes the benefits. But that being said, you'd still get a ton of benefits doing it totally separate from your workout, doing it first thing in the morning when you get out of bed, doing it at night before bed, helps with your sleep, helps you to wind down from the day. I will do it at different intervals throughout the day on days I don't train. So when I work out, I'll usually work out, mid-morning and then do the sauna right after. That might be 4 days a week. The other 3 days a week, I might do it in the evenings. I got 7:30, 8 o'clock as a really good way to wind down from a long day. And then I sleep like a teenager. You sleep amazing.
Yeah, I've heard there's amazing sleep benefits with that temperature drop, right? You heat yourself up, get out of the sauna, crawl in bed, and you're out.
Yeah. You do want to cap it off with a nice cold shower. You don't have to do a cold plunge to get some of the benefits of the cold exposure we were talking about, guys. I actually prefer a cold shower over a cold plunge post sauna specifically. And you're not going to get quite as many of the anti-inflammatory benefits, but you're still going to get the rise in norepinephrine and dopamine. You're going to cool off your core temp so that you're not sweating all night while you're trying to sleep. And that's why I included that. Post sauna, you want to cool your body back off. Otherwise, your core temp will be elevated during bed, which is not good. You want your body temp to be nice and cool.
Nice. Okay, Ryan, I want to go into, this might be the topic I'm most excited about, is breath work. So I know breath work is a big part of your practice. Even just saying that, seems somewhat vague and very general. So walk us through that, because I know you can use your breath to accomplish many different desired outcomes. So what are some of the ways you use breath work, with your clients and even in your own daily life?
You're right, Michael. It is a pretty broad umbrella of modalities. And so I'll unpack a few of the most practical ones I leverage. When it comes to breathing mechanics, first thing people need to understand, and you mentioned to me, Michael, before we started recording, you've read Breath by James Nestor. I had him on my podcast. He's wrote a really good book on this. Another guy named Patrick McEwen wrote a fantastic book on this called The Oxygen Advantage. Listeners don't need to read either book because I could sum it up in 2 sentences. Always breathe through your nose, not your mouth, throughout the day while you're exercising. If you're not having a conversation, which obviously you need to breathe through your mouth when you're talking, but with that exception, always breathe through your nose. We have nervous system receptors in our nostrils that help to calm down our stress levels. It's superior for oxygenating the body. And then the second piece, in addition to breathing through your nose, is we want to take long, slow breaths, not fast, short breaths. So you want to breathe 6 or 7 breaths a minute rather than 10 or 15 breaths a minute. And you don't have to count this all day long or drive yourself nuts, but the idea just being breathe slowly through your nose. Inhale matters most. Exhale, you can go mouth or nose, does not matter. Now that is just a very across the board, good breathing mechanics for day-to-day life. That is how people should strive to live their lives, and it'll make a massive, massive improvement in every aspect of their health, especially if they suffer from anxiety or high stress. This will make a huge difference because it really does help to control our nervous system state. And people who get a lot of anxiety, who get a lot of stress, may not realize it, but they're probably chronically mouth breathing and taking a lot of these short, shallow breaths, which exacerbates the anxiety. And as far as a concentrated practice you could do to apply this, if you wanted to do some controlled breathing, is you could do double the length of exhale versus inhale. This keeps it very simple. So if you breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds, you breathe out for 6 seconds. You can also inhale through your nose for 4, breathe out for 8. By doubling the length of exhale versus inhale, you're lowering resting heart rate, you're lowering your blood pressure, you're literally decreasing that nervous system stress response and dropping from that sympathetic fight or flight nervous system state down to a parasympathetic rest and digest state. It is freaking phenomenal, guys. Now, there's also like box breathing, and there's 4-7-8 breath and all sorts of other slow nasal breathing strategies that can help calm your body down. When people say the word breath work, what I think of, and I think a lot of people think of, is more of these conscious and controlled practices where you're doing a specific type of breathing intentionally to elicit a certain outcome. And so those would be calming breathwork strategies I just mentioned. What I'm super passionate about is deep holotropic breathwork. Now, this is different, the opposite end of the spectrum of calming your body down. And this is where you do a type of deep rhythmic breathing, all in and out through the mouth, because the idea here is to try and bring as much air in as you can, as quickly as you can. And so there's Wim Hof breathing, which is actually called Tumo breathing. Wim Hof just popularized it, but this has been around for thousands of years. And this is a hyperoxygenation where you're bringing as much air in as you can, and you're basically hyperoxygenating, and then you have a breath hold and you repeat. Many people have done that. It's really cool. Gets you all feeling all tingly, and it can get you increased energy and have other benefits to your health. And just you feel awesome after. Holotropic breath work is deep rhythmic breathing, but instead of doing it for 30 or 40 breaths over the course of like 2 minutes, like Wim Hof breathing does, and then taking a break, you're doing it continuously for like 20 plus minutes, 30 plus minutes. And it gets you into this altered state of mind. And the easiest way I can explain it to you guys is it's kind of like a plant medicine experience without any drugs. It gets you into a total altered state of consciousness. And it's incredible. And I host these classes in person. I host them online. And I guide people through this breathing technique along with music and guidance throughout the whole thing to help them go deeper. And the most common feedback I get from students that come to these classes is that it feels like 10 years of therapy in 1 hour. It is transformative for releasing past trauma, for working through different things in your life, clarity and downloads. People cry their eyes out, you scream, you have this big emotional release. Sounds crazy, but it's freaking incredible. And it's kind of intense, but in all the right ways. So that's holotropic breath work. That's the style that I'm most passionate about because I've seen it transform people's lives in 1 hour of people restoring relationships and just different resentment that they carried against their parents or against their spouse or against someone in their life. I've seen it help people really work through different regrets in their life of just constantly beating themselves up about past decisions and mistakes that they've made. I've seen it really restore marriages and relationships with the couples breath work that I do. I've seen it do incredible things that I would never expect, like fix people's insomnia and help people with all sorts of other physical health challenges by letting go of a lot of this stored trauma, these trapped energies in their body that manifest as different disease pathologies or different problems. I'm not saying this is like going to cure everyone's disease. It might help you, it might not, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I've seen some pretty miraculous stuff over the years of teaching this. And it's the single most powerful thing I've ever discovered to create transformative shifts in 1 hour. Most of the stuff I teach guys around nutrition and fitness and supplementation and daily habits and routines, a lot of stuff we're talking about, it takes consistent action day in and day out over the course of weeks and months to really feel and experience the benefits and feel these changes. With breath work, it's like one and done, dude. Like you do this breathing and 45 minutes later, you feel like a different person. And it manifests this transformative impact for your life and how you take action on other things. So it's really powerful for helping to shift your identity, for helping people to eliminate limiting beliefs and self-sabotage and the self-image that they have. And usually to shift your identity, it takes years of consistent action. With this breath work, you could do it in less than an hour. It's transformative.
I'm certainly curious. I've not done this style for that long. Like as you described it, I imagine it to be fairly physically taxing. You know, if I'm picturing it properly, like just the amount of diaphragm strength that you'll be tapping into. But I'm very curious.
Yeah. So it's still lying on the floor breathing. So it's not that taxing. Like you don't need to be an athlete. You don't need to be in like crazy physical shape to do this. Like you're literally lying on the floor breathing. But it is pretty intense. You know, if you've done Wim Hof before, you know, like it requires effort. It requires pushing yourself and challenging yourself. But it's not like running a marathon or like lifting a bunch of heavy weights. Like it's nothing like that physically taxing the way people associate physical fitness with. Now, I will say that I have these classes online. I just sent you guys a link for you to check it out. This class is coming up at the end of December, so I don't know if it'll apply for listeners of this episode, but I host these quarterly. So the same link will apply for my next class that might be coming up in February or March, that people can come from anywhere they are in the world and get this amazing experience. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people improve their health and a lot of different modalities help people. And this is one of the top I've ever witnessed.
Okay, Ryan. Well, I totally lied to you. We did this exactly backwards. I said we were going to start with the big ticket nutrition and exercise and then go into the tangents. So we've done all of those different modalities. In our kind of time that's limited here, let's bring it back to the common exercise, nutrition. All of our listeners will know that they should exercise to some level. They should eat well. You know, they should be eating whole foods. And then, you know, life happens. And for whatever reason, maybe we don't follow this as we should. So I'm curious, in your practice, how do you get people to do what we already know we need to do?
Most people think that they skip out on their workouts or they eat poorly or they don't stay consistent with their health because they don't have enough time or because they're too busy or because of a million other reasons. But the real reason, Michael, is their identity. They don't truly identify as a healthy, fit person. And they don't have the self-image that's conducive to taking these actions that someone who's healthy, vital, and fit would do. And that's where the breath work, how I use it in my clinical practice. I use it to help create long-term behavior change. And now I use other modalities, and having structured guidance is also helpful for this. So it's one thing, guys, to say, hey, you should move more and exercise more. You should eat healthier. You should get better sleep. But this is all super vague. Someone hears this, how do they know what to do? Like, what does that look like? So having the structured guidance of saying, okay, here's your nutrition protocol. Here's when you're going to eat. Here's the meals you're going to eat. Here's the shopping list. Here's the recipes. Here's how you can outsource it to a company to deliver it to your house if you don't have time for this. Here's all the nuts and bolts to actually take this very vague advice and put it into practice. Same thing with the fitness. It's like, okay, you should exercise. Well, it's like, okay, what should I do? So this is what I help my patients with, is saying, okay, do you like to work out at home or at the gym? When do you have available for this? Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings at 6:30 a.m. or is it in the afternoons? And we put it on their calendar. And we say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's the exercises. Here's the number of reps. Here's the number of sets. Here's how you're going to carry this out. It's going to be a 15-minute workout because you don't have time for anything else, or it's going to be 30 minutes. And you actually break this down into a very detailed structure. That helps drive a lot of the change that you're asking about. It's like people are given this super vague input that doesn't help them. Eat less, move more. Everyone's heard it. No one does it, right? So that's one piece. The breath work is the other piece. The third piece is accountability. So I have a series of accountability systems I utilize with patients I work with. Now, for people listening to this that don't work with me, find someone in your life who could hold you accountable. And it's probably not your spouse. It's probably not your friend. It's probably not someone that you shoot the shit with that, you know, is going to love you no matter what. You need to find accountability for people you don't want to let down. You got to have some skin in the game, right? Accountability only works if you care about what that other person thinks of you and you're actually committed to it. And there's a number of ways that can be played out into practice, but I'd encourage people to find people in their life who will bring that level of accountability. Michael, I know you're part of a mastermind group I am, Go Abundance. They're really big on that, pairing you up with other people. It's like, these are really successful, driven guys that are going to call you out on your BS. It's not like your buddy who, you know, you have beers with on the weekends and you're like, hey, I didn't work out. Oh, I didn't either. It's like that type of accountability doesn't work. You need actual accountability. So that's what I leverage in my practice as well with my patients. So it's detailed structure, accountability, and then shifting the identity using holotropic breath work.
Nice. Yeah, I love the identity piece. Two other things that jumped out that'll probably be relevant for our listeners: the decision making. So I know a lot of us struggle with decision fatigue because there's so much going on in our life and so many decisions we have to make. I work with a personal trainer, and the fact that it's just, here it is. I don't have to think at all. Just show up and do it. And then the other thing, this is our mutual friend. I'm very good friends with him. He's working with you one-on-one, and he's told me some of his program, and it's minimum effective dose, right? And you may think, you get it, you start telling yourself all these stories. Oh, if I want to do strength training, it's got to be this hour-and-a-half gym session. And some of the stuff you have him doing is like, no, this is a 15-minute get in, get out, get it done, because he's a busy guy, you know, so it can accommodate all sorts of schedules.
That's right, man. People, what they fail to do is lower the barrier to action. They create all these perceived challenges and obstacles of like, man, I don't have time to like go shopping for 2 hours for groceries and then bring it all home and put it all away and then prep everything and chop up stuff and make dinner for 2 hours a night, then clean all these dishes and do all this. It's like, no one has time for that. But there's a million ways that you can accomplish good nutrition without any of that, any of those steps. Same thing goes with your workouts. People have it in their mind that they got to go to the gym, drive there, find parking, get in there, train for 90 minutes, do a bunch of stretching, shower up, drive home. It's like, I don't have 2+ hours a day to spend on this, Ryan. It's like, neither do I. Luckily, you don't have to. You can do something that's a much lower barrier to action and accomplish these things and build these new habits. And then you could ramp up or down from there. But people need to start with very quick, efficient modalities that don't overthrow their lifestyle, but integrate nicely into their lifestyle. That's the biggest thing I've seen.
Nice. Well, thanks, Ryan. I was trying to get through all of it. We got through lots. I think I told you we were going to go into an impact round. I'm kind of playing an audible here because we're tight for time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, right? Like any big buckets of health that is like, I wish he would have asked me that because people need to know about this. We have a couple minutes that you want to touch on before we kind of wrap this thing.
And there's a lot of directions we can go with this. I think one place to start for a lot of people is lab testing. I know we didn't talk about it whatsoever, like what labs people should get, how they could get those. But when you understand what's going on in your body, it can be very motivating to take action. And then you're not flying blind. You're not just blindly taking these supplements and doing these things without knowing why. Having a deeper why is very important on a broad scale, like purpose for getting healthy, purpose for getting fit, whether it's your family, whether it's your company, your community, or just for yourself. But also knowing like so many people come to me, Michael, and they're so scattered. They're like, I heard this on this podcast. I saw the ad for this supplement. So I started using that. And they're taking like 15 different supplements. They don't have any structure of why they're doing any of it. Half of it doesn't help them. Some of it's harmful. So I think doing lab testing, and then to your point, like you work with a trainer, I think hiring a professional, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in this field, hire someone locally, hire someone that's going to help you with whatever you need help with. Maybe that's a personal chef that comes to your house and preps food for you once a week so that you have meal prep done for you. Maybe that's a fitness trainer, like what you mentioned, to help keep you accountable and guide you through your workouts. Maybe it's a functional medicine practitioner like what I do, but maybe someone locally or someone that, you've been referred to from a friend that can help you bring a lot of these pieces of the puzzle together and take action in a way that hey, this is exactly what I need to do, why I need to do it, and here's how we're going to get it done. I think a lot of people fail to invest in themselves in a way that's the most important investment you can make, right? Our health really is our foundation, and it's going to impact everything you do, how you show up for your spouse, how you show up for your kids, how you show up at work, how you show up for your business. All of those are really predicated on your health and vitality, how you feel every day. It's the most valuable thing all of us have. And of course, you could look at it from a longevity standpoint. Like if you're dead, that's game over. But you can also look at it from a quality of life standpoint and making an investment that's going to increase your energy, your mood, your focus, your recovery, your body composition, your confidence, your verbal fluency, all these things, dude. That's the most valuable thing any of us have. So why would people not allocate more time and focus and attention into it? So that's my parting advice, is to just really look at this equation from a different perspective and realize this is the most important thing we could possibly focus on.
Yeah, I totally agree. As I set my annual goals and vision planning, I tend to have the health pillar at the top just because, like you've said, you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Thanks, Ryan. I mean, this was fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. There will be people, I'm sure, that want to follow along, whether that's social media or maybe reach out to you. Where would be some of the best places that they can get in touch with you and follow your journey?
Website is ryankennedyhealth.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can check out what I got going there, the breath work, how I work with patients in my practice, all sorts of other courses and programs that are available. And then if they want to just follow along with stuff, I'm most active on Instagram, and it's Ryan C. Kennedy is the name there. And that's where I post educational and inspirational videos and material to help people along their journey. And then I have my own podcast. That's my favorite platform, because I can have long form conversations like this. And that's just Ryan Kennedy, the Ryan Kennedy Show. You can find on any podcast platform.
Okay, nice. We'll drop links to all that in the show notes. Okay, Ryan, as always, we leave the final word to you. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
I feel like I just did. I mean, take control of your health, guys. You can't rely on outside influences and the medical system to have your best interest. You got to really prioritize this stuff with the daily actions you take and decisions you make, and it's going to be the best use of your time and effort.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap, on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly, so be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to the veterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.